Let's go right now to our White House correspondent, Savannah Guthrie, who's traveling with President Obama. Savannah, is there new information? Are there any new announcements that President Obama or any of his team have made over the last 24 hours while in Rome and while in Italy more broadly?
Well, there's a big food security initiative. Food security is the term they use. It sounds, it's actually a little different than what it sounds like. They're going to give billions to help developing countries, farmers, learn how to farm better, to increase production. The whole notion being, instead of just giving aid to Africa, perhaps we should give more to teach them how to be more productive.
Now,
the U.S., I believe, is...
Savannah, when I heard that, I got excited. I heard about the $20 billion to countries that the various developed nations would pledge that. But whenever I hear that, it always sounds like something that's going to be far off. Is there anything the White House has mentioned in regard to this that makes it more likely that this is going to work than any of the similar initiatives I feel like we've seen over the last 20, 30 years?
Well, a couple things. I mean, the U.S. has made a commitment. I think the last, the numbers were actually changing up into the last minute. The president talked about it this morning. The last number I saw was $3.5 billion commitment from the U.S. over 3 years. But you do raise a good point. I mean, sometimes the countries make these commitments and don't necessarily follow through on them. And that could be said not just on this initiative, but a lot of initiatives at the G8. And that is why, for the first time, the G8, recognizing this criticism, is going to have accountability and transparency, to use the buzzwords from the Obama administration, and they are planning to release publicly what these countries are doing and how they're keeping up with their commitments. So I think that they recognize, a lot of people feel that there's a lot of talk that gets done at these summits, but not necessarily followed up with action. So we'll see.
Savannah, what has the White House said about the new protests in Iran? Over the last 24 hours, we've seen protesters return to the streets of Tehran. Has the White House said any more? Or are they continuing to focus on quieter diplomacy, if you will?
Well, I mean, the president talked about Iran this morning at his news conference, not specifically about these new protests, but he talked about in general. I think he used the word appalling to describe some of the Iranian government's actions toward these protesters. And he also made it clear that this diplomacy, this engagement, wasn't going to last forever, that they weren't going to extend the olive branch forever and allow Iran essentially to develop a nuclear bomb. So I think there's a little bit more of some deadline pressure. I mean, a few weeks ago, we heard the president say, by the end of the year, we should be getting a good idea of whether or not Iran is serious or wants to engage, or how things are going. And then actually during this G8, the leaders agreed that at the G20 in September, they would take stock of what Iran is doing. And then there's one other thing. I mean, this is something that the Obama administration really feels is significant to come out of this summit in Russia, was Russia will join in on a joint threat assessment for Iran and North Korea. So the wheels of diplomacy are definitely moving.
Hey, Savannah, as the White House and President Obama gets ready to return, it's interesting. We're seeing pictures there of Michelle Obama, the First Lady, dressed up, it would seem, in some spiritual religious garb of some sort. Also see David Axelrod. So it seems like a large contingent in the White House has come out for this historic meeting with the Pope. But what do they expect when they come back? Certainly the Sotomayor nomination is next week, but what are they girding for? What are they preparing for? Are there particular fights, or what are their thoughts?
Well, look, it's all healthcare, and some Sotomayor, certainly the confirmation hearing. But as you well know, while the president has been doing some of this diplomacy overseas in this foreign affairs, he hasn't gotten great headlines at home on domestic issues. I mean, there's the stimulus, a lot of Republicans really seizing the opportunity, his absence to hammer home this notion that the stimulus is not delivering on the jobs it promised, not delivering fast enough. While some, by the way, start talking about whether, not Republicans, but some are talking about whether maybe there should be more stimulus because the current plan is not working. So certainly they'll be dealing with that. And then certainly health care. I mean, Senate Finance Committee grappling with how to pay for this. Some conservative Democrats rebelling a little bit. So the president will have his hands full. Energy, by the way, apparently has been put off while we've been gone, and they're not going to take it up in the Senate until this fall. And that will be a disappointment as well for the administration.
Very interesting, especially while he's on this global trip where climate change is quite the issue. Savannah Guthrie in Italy, thank you so much.